Happy Friday, everyone. I'm Bandish, founder of The Curious Mindset, a private community for technology leadership teams powered by 64 Tech, an IT solutions provider across hardware, cloud, IT services, data, and AI. Now, while 64 Tech powers us, the strength of this community is its people. And together, we're building a world where no technology leader leads alone. We exist to help technology leaders become the best versions of themselves, because the most challenging part of leadership isn't the technology, it's the people. And as you know, in this fast-moving world, most technology leaders are stuck in reactive mode, firefighting issues, buried in strategy decks, and chasing delivery. And the space to grow quietly disappears. That's why we built the Curious Mindset, a private invitation-only community that brings technology leadership teams together and connects them with exceptional minds who share perspectives on leadership. No membership fees, no sales pitches, just a space to learn, connect, and grow through curiosity, connection, and honest conversations. Please do follow our 64 Tech LinkedIn page for updates, and if a partnership with 64 Tech could support your tech team, or if you're ready to shake things up with your IT suppliers, please use the link below to book a call in with me. Now, this community was born out of my own experiences. I know what it feels like to lead in isolation, and I don't want others to go through it alone. Our guiding belief is simple: together we grow. If you believe in what we're building, please stay connected and share it with others. This community grows through invitation and reputation. And it only works when we build it together. We've moved our community from Slack to WhatsApp, making it even easier to stay connected and join the conversation. Please follow the link below to be added or reach out to Bryony directly. Now it's my pleasure to hand you over to our resident host, Andy McMenemy, our technology leader co-host, Steve Maxwell, and our special guest, Ugo Anomelechi. Thank you.
Vanish, thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you again for your continued support. It's been a significant investment on your part over the last 5 years through 64 Tech to support the Curious Mindset. And I know I've learned personally a significant amount from the speakers that we've had, and I'm fairly sure we're all going to learn something today from Ugo Anomelechi. But thank you for your support. Thank you for your continued efforts to make sure the community grows and that it is a safe space for tech leaders to come and enjoy some camaraderie with their peers in the industry. It's my very great pleasure today, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce you to our VIP guest speaker, Ugo Anomelechi, who's going to be giving us some insights into the mindset at the elite level of international sports as a sprinter, and also how that translates directly into his role as senior or head engineer at heycar. Ugo, it's my great pleasure to invite you to the Curious Mindset. Welcome, and I'm really looking forward to this. I'm not going to hold my breath like you sprinters do, because I don't think I can hold it that long. But I'm certainly going to be locked in, and I'm going to be fascinated by listening about your discipline and how you grew your sprinting career and how you've grown your business career. Ugo, it's over to you, my friend.
Thank you. One little thing there. So I was director of engineering at heycar, and that ended this year. And I have started as VP of engineering at Chattermill, just to make sure that everyone has the right info. But yes, it's really pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me here. It's the first time I'm doing one of these, so this is going to be fun for all of us. When it comes to 100-meter sprinting and racing and things like that, I think everyone can relate to that. There are a lot of sports that people do, say pole vault or something like that, is a bit more complex. But when it comes to just racing to the end, I think everyone can kind of relate in some way to that. But imagine that now with everyone in the stadium watching you and expecting you to do your best, representing your team, your county. English Schools Championships, which is where I was in 2000, representing under 17, what they called intermediate boys, and learning to deal with that pressure and still execute everything that you've been doing in training. That's something which I think is relatable to all of you in what you do here today. And I think that has unintentionally and then intentionally guided my progress in leadership. So I'm going to try and connect the two. What I did was do some introspection and to figure out, like, why do I do things this way? What is it about the instincts that I have that has helped me in leadership? And can I trace it back to the way I've been brought up? So that's where this has kind of come from. So I'm going to take you. I'm going to take you back to the English School Championships. Right, I had a okay day on the leading up to the final. In my heat, I came second. I was expected to win it, but I made the cardinal mistake of slowing down towards the end, and someone came right by me. Um, Andy will be very disappointed in that, given he runs as well, that kind of behavior. In the semi-final, there I ran my hardest, but I had actually stumbled out of the blocks. Now my strength was always the last part of the race. I wasn't great at the start usually, and then I would usually kind of catch up and fall through. I had a good pickup, so I learned to trust it. So there, after slipping, coming out of the blocks, I literally had to just focus and trust that I will get there, rather than kind of tighten up and tensing up, which would got me nowhere. So I came second in that. Time-wise, I was ranked fourth going into the final, which wasn't great, given that with my personal best at the time, I should have been right at the top. But couldn't allow the pressure to get to me. And I'm there in the getting ready, warming up, and things like that. And my coach makes it down, and all we're doing is practicing the start. We're just practicing reaction, reaction, reaction. He would clap, and I would go off. He'd clap, I would go off. And so by the time you get into the start line, right, and everyone's watching you, it starts getting quiet, right? On your marks, get down. We just kind of like look towards the end, make sure that my fingers are behind the line, head goes down, set, and then bang. And then you literally have to just rely on instinct to that point, which is where the training comes in. And it's come out immediately. It's, as fast as possible, and then hit the drive phase. And that drive phase, you imagine you're going from zero speed to your top speed. And those first few steps are usually more laborious, and you're dragging against the track. You're using big, it's using those squats. If you've ever done the squat in the gym, it's that kind of power that you're putting into it for the first few steps, and you have to smoothly transition from there into your pickup. And with that, you want your head to come up slowly. You don't want to come up too early. You don't want to get in that flow too early. And then you're in your flow state. And you're at top speed, and you've got to rely on your technique. By the time you're coming towards the end, every single sprinter is slowing down. That's what happens. Anytime it looks like someone is catching up and getting faster, they're just slowing down slower than everyone else, if that makes sense. That's what's happening, with the exception of a few freaks like Usain Bolt, who takes a while to get into his sprinting rhythm. But I came out of the drive phase, and there was just one person to my left, and I was like, okay, so I had a decent start, not the best, but I had a decent one, and I should be able to pick up towards the end. Getting towards 80 meters and just 20 meters left, he's still there. But again, I'm thinking my last part is usually my best. Just relax, I'll be fine. You get to 90, he's still there. I start getting a bit nervous. So I drop my shoulders, breathe out, literally an audible, and let the knees go on. I'll come back to that race. But in general, those phases that I mentioned about the 100-meter race, I find that those really relate well to aspects of leadership, right? The rhythm, right? With finding your flow, that middle phase that I mentioned, rhythm is really important. And in my mind, I realized that I do my best to try and keep the rhythm of the team going and try to reduce the friction as much as possible. The timing, there's knowing when to act, there's knowing when to go from the dry phase up, and there's knowing when to relax and kind of breathe out. There's a discipline of keeping your form, making sure that your team are following the processes still, even when there's pressure. making sure that when scope creep starts occurring, that you still maintain the discipline. You push back on the things you're supposed to push back on. You make sure that your team aren't overly burdened. We're kind of we have machines that we're trying to keep going. When I say machines, I don't mean like the people themselves, but the whole thing, the whole process. You and I, the people who work for you, the people who work with you, you're trying to make sure that a machine is running. Our job, something that my former boss said, which has stuck with me for like the last 2 years, is you need to you're trying to keep this machine moving, and you need to work to make yourself redundant. That's what he said, and it was designed to be almost contradictory, like because like of course no one wants to be made redundant, but that's actually the motivation that we should have. In other words, we want things to be running even when we're not there, and if something's not right, then we have to work to change it. And it also goes to the autonomy and the trust in your team and things like that. So yeah, so discipline really counts for a lot there. So phase by phase, the coming out of the blocks, right? Again, the timing, right? The A lot of the time, I find that people wait around for the perfect moment to start. There might be projects and things which don't have as much uh, requirements given to you, or it's very flexible, right? I think a lot of people are already thinking of something right now where they're just like, we need to do this, and it's like, well, what exactly do you want me to do? Um, and yes, absolutely, we need to make sure that we get requirements. We need to make sure we're doing the right thing. But also, it's just good to start. Sometimes just doing something triggers the right thoughts. A lot of the time, our leaders, our bosses, they don't know what they're doing. Our shareholders, they don't know. They know what they want to achieve, but they don't quite know it. So when we start, it can often trigger that kind of thing. Back in heycar, we at some point we were just very isolated in our geographies. I was working with the UK. There was Germany, which is where it was started. There's France and Spain and Netherlands, and we were all working independently, not just solving the same problems with tech, but different tech stacks in a lot of ways too. So we came together finally, and there as head of platform engineering, I somehow had to help us get on this journey to centralizing our tech. Now, a lot of you would probably know the issues that already come with this: cultural issues, people not wanting to feel redundant in what they've made, people feeling very proud of what they've done. What do you choose out of the different tech that's there, and things like that? But also, what what do we actually need to do? What's the requirements? Centralized attack is not a requirement, right? So what I did was like, okay, I believe that a lot of the issue comes from not knowing what is actually going on in another team. So a team in Germany might not know what's been going on in the equivalent team in the UK, and vice versa, and several teams like that. So I organized the kind of a training session where people, like all the people in the engineering team, would take part, and we had a good 2, maybe 3 weeks of sessions that people could sign up for. They would give an architectural discussion of the area they take care of, and everyone would chime in. Everyone would be attending, and what that did was it removed uncertainty. People started to understand things that were taken care of in one place that isn't with theirs. The obvious places of centralization began to surface. But more importantly, people started moving. There wasn't a long few weeks of like, oh, okay, well, we need to do this requirements gathering. We don't have the exact requirements from leadership, so we can't do anything. This actually triggered things. And so I believe that came from me just wanting to start. A lot of the time, we can be boggled in discussions for a really long time.
I love that analogy
Yeah,
that you gave of getting out of the blocks, and then the process that was there for you to practice, first of all, to create that discipline, right? To
yes,
slowly bring your head up.
yeah,
It resonated with me because my mantra when I was in a leadership role was it was my responsibility to do my job to the highest level so that those that measured me were happy, but
yes,
then get my head up and help my team to do the same. So I love the way you talk about slowly and gradually. Once you've taken
yeah.
care of your responsibility, is bringing your head up and then looking for the
Then
rest of the people.
That's right. Timing is everything, right? The I don't know if you ever watch a 100-meter race and you look closely, you see that they have their heads down for the first 30 meters of the race, some for even longer. But those people who immediately go up after coming out of the blocks, you find that they start pulling back, and they're not going up to their right speed because there is a time to get into your flow, and there's a time to do the dry phase, and you have to think about that, and not rush. You, you want to start, but you don't want to rush through the phases as you go along. So that's absolutely right. The dry phase is especially important too, because that's a rhythm. Like I said, that's when you're putting in the most effort into your legs from a strength perspective, because you're going from zero speed to get into your flow state. And so that for me is like, it's trust and it's rhythm. In that situation that I was talking about, as we had a new team for platform team for centralization, my team spanned across Germany and UK. People in UK knew who I was. The people in Germany did not, and I could already foresee issues in future, partly due to culture and partly because, who is this person? What do they know about what we do? And that, which are natural questions. And I tend to put my mind in everyone else's to see how they're feeling about it. So I scheduled trips to Berlin every other month and would spend a good amount of time with them for them to get to know me, for me to get to know them, for us to whiteboard and talk about possibilities so that they feel a part of it. And that was building the rhythm and building the trust to remove friction later on. So that is kind of an example of the dry phase that that I was speaking about before. But
I guess that's also a great example, Ugo, of being a highly visible leader, right? Because, like you say,
yes,
you're based in the UK, you've got a team there as well, you've got responsibilities in both, but you have to show up and be visible as a leader. People need to be able to see you to build a
yes.
relationship with you, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. And not just those that are working for you or with you, but in other departments as well, for them to understand too. So that visibility is extremely important in general, actually. And that's something that as engineers, we're not great at. We like doing the work. We like solving problems. And that's where we naturally kind of go to. And I see the importance of marketing engineering, if that makes sense. And some of that is bringing yourself out there. Often, if I'm trying to grow someone into a principal role, they might have all the skills necessary. They've got it all. And I say the thing that's missing is people don't know. People in your team know, but the people in the other teams don't know. So now let's work up a plan to increase your PR for this team in order for them to see that, hey, I have this problem. I know that's the person I need to go to. It's actually necessary. So these are some of the things that I end up thinking about. So yeah, the flow state, right? Everyone gets into uh, kind of a phase where things are working swimmingly. You're
Sorry,
going through the tickets.
Ugo,
I'm
Ugo,
sorry.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to
No,
break you right in the
go
middle
for
of
it.
your chat about flow.
Go for it.
Can I just do an adjustment to your mic?
Yes,
The noise suppression, which I did ask you to reduce for quality purposes, but it's picking up a lot of people in the
picking up a
background.
lot more. Let
And would
me
you
let
mind
me
just going up to sort of medium or high? And I'm so sorry to
yeah.
disrupt your
No, no,
flow.
that's okay. That's okay. How's this? Or in fact, let me put it on to high. How's this?
Put it onto high because I think you've got some people
Yeah,
sort of popping in the background.
yeah. I put it on to high now. Is that
That
good
It's the
sounds,
enough?
crowd. It's the crowd cheering you on.
yeah.
Of course it is. Of course it is. Yes.
Apologies for the interruption. I think that'll
No,
be
no, absolutely
sort of
fine.
more comfortable for everybody. And I will step back. Thank
Like
So take us
everyone
back
hear
in.
me
Take
okay?
us back into flow, Ugo.
Back into the flow state. Back to the flow state. That's the very thing actually that you have to deal with though. Interruptions. That's always going to happen. And it's our job as leaders to relieve that friction from our teams so that they can remain in that flow state. There are necessary changes. There are pivots. There are um, unplanned unplanned changes to requirements. And it would either be that we do something to push back if necessary, or find ways to fit it into the same cycle of what they're doing. Um, as an example, I think for the UK, we were trying to roll out e-commerce so they basically sell used cars online, but we generally sell leads to other companies. But we wanted to have e-commerce on the platform, and that's something that was really important. But the time, I had only just convinced the leadership for us to improve our leads platform and to make it a lot more flexible and scalable. And the team were working really well, in a nice flow. I was working with them too. So when this requirement came in, what I did was change it so that we could use the work we've done for the scalability of leads to serve e-commerce in the really short 2 week space that they had given, which also buys us time to do it properly, but it gives them what they need as an MVP whilst continuing the flow of what they're working in. So it kept the team going, and it's that kind of thing. So keeping a team in the flow state is, I think, really important. If you feel the pressure, your team can see it. Like, they can feel it. If you rise to the same pressure that's been put on you, your team end up feeling it. But if you're good at absorbing it, and of course it goes through, if you've got multiple layers of leadership, then you absorb some and you might pass some to the next leader, and they absorb some and pass it on, and make it so that the team is as frictionless as possible. And then the bit for me that was probably the most important, or the area that people came back to ask about after the talk, was the end, and the slowing down, and trying to prevent yourself from slowing down too quickly. And that breath is really, really important. It's really, if you actually tried it yourself, if you're sitting right now as I am, and you suddenly went, you literally find your shoulders going down, and I can't tell you what that does to hundredths of a second of your race. It really, really makes a difference. You find, because your body kind of tightens up when you're going in those last few stages of the race. You're trying to get ahead. You want to be in front. And if you're not in front, which is often the case in tech leadership, then you're really trying to, you start to kind of tighten up. But when you take that breath, it releases your muscles again, and then it's able to go that bit further. That breath can literally be as simple as this. Something that I do sometimes on my team is, towards the end of the quarter, no matter how much pressure there is to try and finish something towards the end of the quarter, I'll tell people, make sure that you have a mental break between now and the next one. You have to have a breath between them. Otherwise, you're just going to tighten up later on in that next quarter. And it will go a lot easier on them, specifically in that time, and say, like, don't worry about that. No, okay, you need to finish early? Absolutely fine. This thing can wait. It might seem contrary to trying to get things done, but it does have the effect of speeding things up later, because we're used to continual pressure. And if you take a breath between that, you end up doing a lot better. If you're in the gym and you're just continually doing sets, and it's like, no, but I need to get to, it's not going to work, right? You have to have a break in between them. That makes sense to us logically there, but when we're when I'm doing work, a lot of the time we don't think that way.
That's a great point, actually, because as you know, in the gym and when we're training our muscles, they're built in recovery. So the muscles are, their repair process and the growth phase of the muscle is done in the recovery. And that's exactly the same for our psychology and our mental muscle. It's as you say, taking that break. I talk about the sort of 5 hours of active recovery, reflect, recuperate, rehydrate, re-energize, whatever works for you. But it's that focused discipline of taking the break, doing the self-assessment, and then that helps you get into that flow state so much quicker next time.
Yeah, no, you are absolutely right. And I find it so interesting that it's obvious to us when we're doing physical exercise. Not so obvious to some people. Elite athletes probably are not great at taking rest and breaks. But when we're actually, if we're just doing it to be fit and things like that, we naturally like, okay, now I need to rest before you go back to it. At work, if you do that, you find, if you actually take that break, you will find that your team performs so much better if you have that kind of mental breath and actually actively think, how am I going to take that breath? That breath may be pushing back on this thing really needs to be done by this week. And you standing your ground and saying, this was planned for this particular time. And we've had scope creep here, we've had this there. And it's also doing this earlier on. You're looking at the risk between now and the deadline. You see something else that comes in. So, okay, you want this to come in. What do you want to come out? And face the people that you are dealing with and saying, if this comes in, something's got to come out because the plan we had before was different. It's not being confrontational about it. It's just prioritizing, just reprioritizing. It's like, oh, I like this idea that you have, but what do we take out in order to make space for this? And you put framing it that way. What you've done is you've already accounted for the taking a breath later on down the line, because when you're getting towards the deadline and people might have an expectation of a deadline, it may change because of that conversation that you've had a few weeks ago. But yeah, like I say, your team will see if you're letting the pressure get to you, and it will affect the team too. And if they feel relaxed to be able to work better, you'll find that it frees them up cognitively speaking. So yeah, so I probably feel like that breath is knowing when to breathe is probably the 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 most important one, takeaway from this. Holding your form is the other one. When under pressure, holding form under pressure, and that's keeping people in the flow state. And the fact that you don't need a perfect start. You just need to start. I'm a big fan of James Clear. He's that I mean, when I discovered him, again, it was one of those things where I had started learning from myself and my life, and I started implementing certain techniques. And then I found that there's this book that's describing exactly those things. And so they're right, I'm going to latch onto this. I'm going to learn some more from this guy. And he very much talks about starting and not waiting for things to be perfect before you start. And you'll be surprised at what you're able to do if you take that attitude with anything, really. So, yeah, that's it. You don't need a perfect start. You just need to start. Inspiration, you don't wait for inspiration. Inspiration comes from starting. It comes from practice. So yeah, that's something I'll take from that. Going back to the race, I did actually win that English schools race by the skin of my teeth. I didn't know that I had won. It was only when they did the announcement that I realized. But that if I didn't take that breath towards the end and allow the technique to carry me through, that wouldn't have happened. And I kind of, whatever I'm doing, whether it's in the gym, the rare times I'm able to go, or at work, I often cast my mind back to. I've never been in such a locked in mind state as when I was on the blocks there, because of the failures for me in the heat and in the semi-final, for one reason or the other. I was thinking about that. It's like I can't let any of that happen. So I was really, really, truly focused. And so I find that psychologically, if I just cast my mind back to that, that helps me to get in the in the flow that I need to. And how I executed that race, that's what sticks to mind as opposed to the winning. I kind of don't remember how it felt to win that. It was the actual process that sticks with me, and I try to apply.
And I love the fact that you've broken the process down for us, because obviously the result is an output of the process, isn't it? And all of those key essential parts of the process have to be paid attention to. And I'm curious to think about bringing it back into business when you're working with your teams, especially with international teams.
Mm-hmm.
How do you inspire them to lock in at whatever stage they're in the process of? How do you inspire them to narrow that focus? I mean, as a sprinter, it's sort of 9-10 seconds. But in a business project, what's your skills for doing that, Ugo?
So when you're if you're in a 100-meter race, it's very simple. You want to win, right? You want to get to the end first. But it's not necessary. It's more the fact that it's very simple, the motivation, the why, right? So I try to apply the why to everyone I'm working with, and I think about what motivates them, every single person. So the visits to Berlin, all I'm thinking of in my head is like I need to give them a why. And I had this vision for how we can combine the two technologies. I had written this vision. I didn't show it to them. I wanted them to work it out for themselves so that they have the why. If it's me dictating it to them, they wouldn't feel inspired. They would do it, sure, because people will be diligent in their jobs. But what's important is what is motivating them. So I went, and by the time I'd drawn up what I think would work, with them, we went on the whiteboard and I asked questions. And we started from that, and they were answering. And I would use the questions to shepherd them to the kind of answer that would work for everyone. And before you know it, they came up with what was essentially the same as what I had drawn up. Now, it's not manipulation, which it might kind of seem like. What it was getting them to see the whys themselves from the question answers, and they felt invested in it. And then even when you go on a granular level, when you have your one-to-ones, figuring out what drives them. I like to one of the questions I like to ask in one-to-ones is, what is the thing that you nerd out about this job? Like, and for some people it's different. Like, I love the DevOps. I just love doing solving this kind of problem. Or some people's like, oh, I love architecture. Or some people's like, I love kind of managing people. I love figuring out people's whatever it happens to be, or even just a particular area. And so I try to subtly kind of shepherd things in such a way that it would get people to that place. And when they see that you are invested in that, that drives their why. Now they're putting in the extra effort. I'm trying to hold them back from doing too much. And so that's what tends to work for me.
And I guess with a bigger team, as in athletics, you've got team doctors, you've got nutritionists, you've got sports condition coaches, you've got physios, you've got
Absolutely.
you've got a whole team of people there rallying you forward. How do you break down the kind of the silo mentality that can exist in some businesses?
Yes. I I I hate silos, but I particularly like the way that my former boss used to put it. He's like, so if he sees anyone building a castle, he'll take it down. And I love that. I was like, yes, that's exactly what I want. Because it's very easy to form that, but to form these kind of silos. And depending on the size of the company, it can be quite difficult. Admittedly, when you have a large company, it's quite difficult to not have those silos because some probably acting as independent companies almost within the larger one. But this is partly the reason why I like to work in relatively smaller companies, whether it be startups or companies with a startup mentality. And the when you find, going back to the motivations, when you find that the end goal can only be met by working with each other, by not having those silos, by sharing technological ideas, then they're wanting to do it. Again, it's taking the time to actually talk them through that motivation. And I often will just use questions rather than telling specifically, because it makes them see it themselves. So
I
some
guess
people
it's aligning them behind the vision, isn't it?
That's exactly it. Exactly it. But we've had difficult times of that. Some people having their own idea of what the tech stack should be within their team and whatnot, and because they want to be more independent, right? But what I would show them now is that they're not independent, and when things go wrong, they then have to rely on teams to clean up their own mess. And so, by showing them the logical outcome of certain steps, they're now drawn to say, actually, yeah, it's a good idea if we do share this technology or abide by these processes or this framework from these other teams so that we can rely on them in terms of need. For some people, like I mentioned before, not everyone, well, I didn't mention before over here, I mentioned it to you privately. Some people can't be changed and some people like to kind of go forward. And in those times, sometimes you have to let people hit a wall. And I had to learn that the hard way. But some people just have to hit their head on the wall and then they see, and then you understand. And it still then becomes self-motivated because they hit that wall or put their hand in that fire. So yeah.
And I guess, that is a skill of a good coach as well as a good leader, isn't it? It's to be there to pick them up and support them when they've banged their head against the wall. And then
That's
they
right.
realize there is a better
That's
way
right.
to do it. Their way is one way, but it's not the only way.
Not the only way, exactly. And I'm sure it would happen to me in a number of scenarios. It can happen. Everyone just has to be open to it. I tend to be very open to suggestions anyway, so it 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 doesn't happen so much, but I'm open to it when it happens, and everyone should be. But yeah, if the right kind of when you're working in a really good team, I believe that right now I'm working in a really, really supportive team, and when they find that I've taken on too much or I'm going to hit a wall, they're there to support me to make sure that what I'm doing succeed. And I appreciate it so much. And everyone just needs to be open to that from other teams, from the people working for you as well. You need to be able to take that from them.
So before we hand over to Steve shortly, just to take the questions, because I can see the chat's going wild, Ugo, I'm curious to understand how you prefer to celebrate the success. How do you do the victory lap of honor with the teams, especially when you're working remotely across countries, right? You've got to celebrate the successes, but how does that work for you?
It's very difficult. And I'll give a recent example of one. We here at Chattermill, we released a feature, observations. This is so what the company does is they take in um, user survey data, reviews, and things like that. We collate them, use AI to categorize them, analyze them, and then present it back to those businesses to see what customers are saying about them and their feelings, the sentiment, etc., etc. And we've released these observations feature, which has a really nice, um, compact summaries of the different views. And so what I did, this is a team that for the most part, they had never seen each other. Some of them work in Poland, some of them work in Spain, in the UK, in England, in Scotland, and things like that. So I organized this offsite in Krakow, which we had just recently, 2, 3 weeks ago, and this was kind of our celebration. The idea really was that I wanted to meet the team. I wanted to at least see each other once. Here's something that I like to say to people: make sure you charge the remote control batteries. Remote controls only work if you charge the batteries. So every so often you do have to connect. Then you have the power to work remotely for a while. So this is what I was attempting to do. But then the product and data science, they wanted to come too because they had never met a lot of people and they've been there for years. So that became our celebration. And we spent some time in the evenings as well, walking around Poland, especially for those who were native, kind of showing us around. And the connection is what really helped, and everyone was really supportive of that. Like it wouldn't have happened if people didn't make sure that I had ways around things like the budget and the organization and execution and things like that. So yeah, so I guess that's the way that I like to kind of celebrate. But also, like I say, having people take a deliberate breath is another way. Like I say, it can feel counterintuitive when pressures are mounting, but just to say, you know what, for this week, don't pressure yourself too much. Just kind of take it easy. They may not, but seeing reflected in you the calm and just lack of pressure makes them feel less pressure automatically, even if they're still working hard that week. And I think that's important too when they start up again in the next quarter.
I think it's time for you to take a breath, and I'm going to introduce you now to Steve, our resident tech leader, who's going to take
Excellent.
important session of our session today, which is fielding you some questions that are coming from the audience. Steve is our resident tech leader. He always has a lovely question to ask. So I'm going to invite Steve Ugo onto the platform now to handle over some questions, but I'll come back to you at the end.
Hello, Steve.
Hello, Ugo. Thank you, Andy, as always, for putting me on a bit of a pedestal there for the question. So let me see what I can do. But Ugo, first of all, back to you. This has been a really fascinating session and on point on so many levels. I think that the community here in front of you today have been offering some really interesting points, building on what you've been saying. It's absolutely hitting sort of the right cause, I think, for the community. Mental breath, for example, absolute banging statement. And if it's okay with you, several of us have stolen that one for our own toolkit.
Good. It's all right. It's about 30-40 pounds per usage in blogs. That's fine. I can send you my PayPal and yeah.
That is really funny. And actually, my question is all about personal PR. I'll come on to that in a second. Another one that really resonated with the audience was you don't need a perfect start. You just need to start. And
That's right.
It was a real penny dropper, I think. It's brilliant, and it's a great mindset for us all, isn't it? In and outside of work, really. You know, getting started is the thing, not necessarily starting well. So that was another nugget of gold, Ugo. Let me cut to the chase and ask you my question. This is around partly your own seemingly meteoric rise, if I can say that, which is in itself inspiring. But I liked what you said, Ugo, about helping your principal engineer raising their own PR. That's oftentimes the thing that's missing in tech. And I think that's really interesting. And it made me wonder, did you have, when you were then on your rise, I imagine you must have in some ways nailed your own PR to an extent. Were you naturally gifted at that, or did you have a coach or a mentor who helped you? Did you have a strong peer group? How did you do it seemingly so well?
This is interesting. I think I have. I think it's natural. I definitely haven't had any coaching in this area. And so the thing about me is I'm extremely self-analytical, and I can't help it. So I'm always asking the question why. Right from no one at school, you can't tell me about formulas to do with sine, cosine, and tangent without me asking, but why? Like that was just me. Um, so I when I was so I released an app some years ago, 10 or so years ago. It was based on the Jarvis digital butler from Iron Man, right? I really wanted one, and in doing so, um, I first of all I did it for myself. Some people wanted to take a look, so I then refactored it and released it on Android. But then I had to market it, and I started learning things from that period of time. Uh, Things like people connect to other people, right? Not to companies. Like they connect to people and using that aspect about the way that you present yourself. And I kind of took that in pretty much everything that I did. And I became better at marketing in general because of managing your own. I think when you become a CEO or you release an app or something like that, and you have to do all sorts of different parts of it, you end up becoming better at all these different aspects. But as went along, if I had any success, I would wonder why, and I'll self-analyze and try to think of what I did to kind of get there. And I use that in my mind to form a framework of how other people can use it. So um, I noticed that some principal developers who are looked upon, who are referenced every single time when something goes wrong, they're known for doing it because everyone knows when they do fix a really important issue. So it seemed natural to me. It's like, okay, well, this is what when you do something, you need to be able to show, hey, this is what I've done. I hope this is useful to you all, but doing it in a way that isn't bragging and kind of balancing that fine line. So um, that was essentially what I gave advice to others about. For me, it's a little bit unique because my former boss will tell you that I didn't intend to go into leadership, and he kind of tricked me. Um, the I love doing the work. I love coding. I love getting my hands dirty. I love doing architecture. I did enjoy mentoring people and things like that, but I didn't want to just be doing management. And he offered me the role at the time of head of backend engineering and said that a certain percentage of my time can go towards still being practical. So I would do both, and kind of again staying in my lane, but by me doing the best that I could, it just got noticed. Um, Even if I'm trying to elevate those who's working with me, and it's like, look, this guy managed to do, like our team has done this because this guy spent the whole evening working through this and that and the other. Besides elevating that person, that ends up elevating yourself as well to the right eyes, the right people, and then you say, oh, you know what, this person's ready for the next level. So I just kept doing my job. It's a little bit different, but I did analyze and notice patterns, and I would apply that to what I'm teaching others.
I think what you just articulated there, Ugo, is pretty much what we promote in the curious mindset. That self-curiosity, asking yourself why. When it goes right, why? When it goes not
Yes.
so right, why also? It's just a perfect mindset that you just articulated there. Thank you for that. I've got a question on behalf of Paul Morgan in the community. Here we go. He's in a busy office. I think he's got his Christmas party today, so all is forgiven, Paul. And his question is, are there times when the sprinter/sprinting analogy hasn't worked in your experience?
Mm. Well, the thing about the sprinters mindset framework is that I made it up. And that's what's amazing about it is it's what I define it to be. So the only the only parts that I've applied the analogies to, are the things that have worked. So what I haven't done is take the life and training and signs of a sprinter and say this is what tech leadership should do. What I've done is, again, I self-analyze the way that I do things, the things that worked, the things that didn't work, and try to trace back as to why I had the instincts to do certain things. And I trace them right back to the life and discipline of the sprint. You can find it in lots of other places as well, by the way. You can probably relate to some disciplines in gymnastics, for example, in tech leadership and several other places. But I think a lot of really good inspiration in general comes from merging two different worlds together to find the lessons and extra lessons. So since doing that with a sprinter's leadership mindset, let's say that I identified the breath, for example, then you can start thinking, are there any other connections, anything else that I can learn and apply it? And the start was one of those things. And it's like, oh, well, yes, of course. And I found that when I actually just get started rather than wait for things to be perfect, then I end up making progress, just like in 100-meter sprinter. So yeah, so that's why it has worked, because I've only applied it to the things that worked in my life.
Wow, there you go. Do you know what? Again, it's just another nugget for me. And when I think back to your honesty there around, this is your experience has led to this framework because it's uniquely yours. What that speaks of, I think, is we've all got our own unique journey, and that should be a confidence builder for us all, right? The journey we've taken is the thing that makes us uniquely gifted in our job.
100%. 100%. And you've got to take what's uniquely yours into it. Like it's never going to be the same for another person. And this is where, I mean, it starts to go into another topic about comparisons and things like that. But you're not on the same train track as everyone else. They might, for a period of time, be going the same direction, but it's not the same train track. It's in the last 5 years that I've decided to allow leadership to be a thing. For some other people, a few years. In fact, in heycar, when I was a director, one of the other directors was very young, and he's on a different trajectory, very gifted, and the timing and everything works really well. So people are on different trains, and you got to take what's unique to yourself.
Definitely, fully agree with that. I'm tempted to ask you whether you ever had that kind of that devil of comparison, but I won't, because this is a community after all. I'm going to invite Brian to come off of mute.
The answer is yes.
Interesting question.
The answer is yes. Yeah. But I'll just say this quickly. Comparisons are good for very specific things. You just have to be very specific about what you're comparing because of something that you want to do. The reason for my comparison is for me to get better. And so I know that. And so it's not something that's going to depress me. It's not something that's going to make me feel, oh no, this person done this. It makes me ask. I was working at Bloomberg, and there was this one guy. He was a whiz on the Linux terminal. Now, I love using the CLI, and that's the way that I've been from uni. But when I see this guy and his productivity, he's one of those kind of 10x kind of developers, and I was envious of that kind of talent. But the result was me asking him several questions about how he knew this. He would do something really simple. It's like, how did you know to do that? It's like, oh, this is one of my scripts. Oh, okay. So in my mind, I'm thinking, have you entered a script that make you quicker? How do you do this? And over time, I found that I've now been that person that someone looks over my screen and be like, how are you doing that? You don't see that happening, but it's because I compared for the purpose of improving myself. And that's the slight caveat. So.
Love it. There's a lot of nods when you said that. Hugo. Another point that resonates a lot in the audience. Okay, without further ado, Brian, you've been waiting patiently. What's your question, sir?
No, it's fine. I was going to say, I think the thought of taking a breath and that calming chaos resonated with me so much. And for me, often leadership feels like actually doing a marathon, but at a sprinter's pace. And you want to be the best for your team, support your team, and you're literally moving from one challenge to the next. So you spoke about depressurizing, and I'm just keen, what apart from taking a breath, what else do you do to keep that pressure down to have that calmness, whether it be in work or outside of work, to enable you to function at your best?
Yeah. So there are several different things. I'll give you an example of one. The prioritization is a big, massive thing. A lot of the time, the pressure gets to us because we think we need to do everything, either all at once or at the times when people say. And after a while, I realized I have this system that I have. I use Trello for my personal everything. Like my life wouldn't work without it, honestly. But the reason for it, the reason I started using it was because I used to think it wasn't really to kind of track all my to-do. It was because I always felt at the end of each day that I wasn't achieving, like I wasn't doing what I set out to do. So I decided to write down all the things that I was doing at the beginning of each day and look at what actually happens. If there was a new task that came in, I will put it in and then move it to done. Like I would be pedantic with it. And what that did was it helped me to see, look at all these things that are done. Yes, there are all these things left to do, but this is what's done. So this is what's happening. So it's all to do with prioritization. So in order to make sure that I don't get too bogged down, I would make sure that I have this list that I can see, you know what, I prioritize the right thing. There was nothing that could be done for these. And for those things, I tell, whether it's my boss or whatever happens to be, this can't be done in this state. This has to move because of these other things, and being honest about it. I think as leaders, we like it when those who are working for us actually ask us about our opinion about prioritizing things, because it helps us do our job well of prioritizing their tasks. And it's the same thing for us. And for when the stakeholder is ourselves, so the task that you're doing for your own home or your life or your relationships or whatever it happens to be, you have to say to yourself, okay, the reason I can't do this is because this thing takes top priority. And that helps to diffuse as well.
No, completely agree. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you. Another great answer. So we're looking relatively short of time, so I'm going to go swiftly on to the next question. This one's from James Maunder. James, would you like to come off of mute and ask your question, sir?
Sure. Sorry, always that panic of where's the mute button on Zoom. Ugo, this is really fascinating. Thank you. My question, the notion of taking a breath and pacing a team really resonates. I'm interested, though, in what self-knowledge and self-confidence do you need, A, to recognize that you need to take a breath, and B, to take a breath in an organization or a culture in which it isn't naturally encouraged?
Yeah, you do need. So I have an unusual confidence in that, which I think probably comes from my experience in things like sprinting, and so I kind of know it instinctively, and I will impose it no matter what anyone says. And like I say, sometimes it's just letting your team know. So there'll be times where the pressure comes from my boss and whatnot, and I'm just deciding not to pass that on to the team. And that is taking a breath. That's an example of one. I simply say, I'm trying not to say give specific examples because they might be actually listening. But for certain things that I've just decided, no, I'm not passing this on. But like I say, what that does is it actually does help the team to move on. The culture can sometimes be really pressurized like that, and you have to be the one to change it by doing so. People didn't realize that I was doing this taking a breath thing. It's not something that was explicit out there. I just decided to do it with my team because I know that it will make them perform to the best that they are, and we will get the right outcomes. And so all people will see is success, results, like what we're doing right. So I kind of kept that in a bubble. And really, this year is the first time that I'm expressing how I've been doing that to others. So, yeah.
Wow. Thanks, Ugo.
Thanks, James, for that. And by the way, James, I loved what you said in the chat earlier on around your mountain hike experience recently. I'm sure that Ugo's not had a chance to read the chat at this stage, but that was really interesting. Do you just want to share that one quickly for Ugo as well?
Yeah, my wife and I, wonderful experience. We did a 2-day hike up and down Mount Olympus, and it was us and two other hikers with a guide called Stavros. He really was lovely, lovely man. Learned a lot about Greece. What was really interesting, that I mean, Mount Olympus, it's huge, and it's basically straight up and then straight down. What was really interesting, he paced us really, really slowly, right from the beginning. And we would walk for about an hour, 90 minutes before we'd had a break. And the break was literally 5 minutes, and then we'd go off. And the pace, by the time we got to the top, which is 2,900 meters, and it's snow and ice, and we got crampons on, the pace at the top was the same as the pace at the bottom. And it was and at no point did anybody get so tired that they couldn't carry on. But the breaks were literally just to take a breath, really. To take a breath and then carry on. And I hadn't really thought of it as an analogy for the workplace. And your presentation has really opened my eyes of that as a really helpful analogy and narrative to share with the team. So thanks.
I'm so glad about that. If you get the chance, watch Kelly Holmes, 800-meter Olympian. Watch her race, especially her Olympics race. And she's always known for kicking in that second 400 meters. But if you listen to the commentators and you watch the times, she is carrying an even pace. That's what she's doing. Like, everyone else was going really quickly in that first 400. It looks like she's hanging back, but she's just keeping the same pace. And obviously she puts more effort in the final 400 in order to maintain that pace. And it looks as if she's kicking, but she is actually just done. And so even pace is really important. Absolutely.
No, incredible. Thanks.
Spot on. Thank you, Ugo. We are out of time, so I'm going to stop there. Folks, we've got some other questions which we've not had a chance to get around to. It's a shame we haven't got 2-hour lunches, right? But that's about it from us, I think. Before I hand back over to Andy, my usual thank yous. Thank you, Ugo. You've been an absolute source of inspiration for us. It's been brilliant on Curious Mindset. Love to see you again. Andy, as ever, it's been wonderful listening to you doing your thing, and you do it so well. Of course, Bandish, Bryony, 64 Tech, everyone behind the scenes. This wouldn't be possible without all of you, so thank you. And finally, to you guys showing up every time. It's great to see you all here. Brilliant questions as ever. And I will say, have a great weekend. Over to you, Andy.
Steve, thank you so much. And thanks for managing the pace through the questions. I know it's sometimes quite challenging trying to toggle between everything. Guys, our wrapping up session is on Friday, the 12th of December. And we're going to be joined by Dr. Katie Best from the London School of Economics, who's written a book called The 10 Toughest Leadership Problems and How to Solve Them. So I will look forward to seeing you all again on Friday, the 12th of December. Have a fabulous weekend. Ugo, thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
all.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Cheers, guys. Enjoy your party, Paul.
Thank you.